If your opening lines don't show why this moment matters, readers quit on page one. Not because your idea isn't good, but because your hook isn't doing its job. In the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly what your hook must accomplish so science fiction and fantasy readers feel instantly pulled into a story already in motion and feel an irresistible urge to keep reading. That's your hook's job, after all. For it to work, your first lines have to show readers why they should care about this moment. Otherwise, they'll struggle to continue and your story will feel like it hasn't really started. And this is the exact problem I've helped hundreds of authors solve when I coach them through their first lines. Because of that, I know plenty of authors say they have no problem themselves reading past opening lines of pure description or fantasy weather. But I don't know, guys. At some point, I have to wonder if that's all to excuse your own opening darlings you don't want to kill yet. Or maybe you're just not sure what your opening really needs to do to be effective for your novel. I mean, sure, there are exceptions that have worked, and the only real rule is if it works, it works. However, when these are also the same authors lamenting how hard it is to get even an avid reader to take a chance on their novel, the opening lines, getting them through that first page, are probably the biggest hurdle after the pitch or marketing copy. Why is it so hard? Because you haven't clued readers into why they need to be there yet. And that moment in the story, reading about that character and that situation, that right moment matters. Think of it from your reader's perspective. If you're a relatively new to them author without trust built up that your book will exceed in delivering a satisfying or delightfully devastating experience, investing in your book is kind of a big ask, no matter how many books they typically inhale. Sure, your book might be under 10 US dollars. It might even be free or in manuscript form for beta reading, but money isn't the only investment in it. Attention is. And attention requires cognitive effort, especially in sci fi and fantasy, where there's a natural learning curve. No matter how savvy or willing your reader, starting a new book is always an initial mental effort. It's not a particularly passive activity, and it takes like at least a dozen hours. To quote Madeline L'Engle, author and reader meet on the bridge of words. Readers bring their own emotional memory, lived experience, and pattern recognition to the page. That's how they become immersed in your story by essentially running their own prediction simulations based on what they know already, but also from the clues and context they glean from the narrative. They're trying to understand, who is this story about? Why is this moment important or relevant? What am I supposed to feel right now? And that gives them crucial pieces they need in order to know how to care about it at all. Helped along through empathy, thanks to their mirror neuron responses, treating it all like real life, giving them that level of emotional investment and all the other really fascinating theories of brain science of the reader experience of story. That means your opening lines have to provide the right kinds of clues for those processes to really engage, to connect them emotionally so they care, and compel them to keep reading so they can finish those prediction loops your story has just started. But beyond the opening lines it encompasses, the hook is a structural turning point beat. A turning point might sound a little strange for a beat at the start of a story, but the hook is just as much a turning point as any of the others. You can see how they all work together to progress your story in my Spellbook Outline Story Turning Points template, linked in the description below. So let me explain what I mean by a turning point. Because your hook isn't just your first sentence or even the prettiest or punchiest line you've ever written. Your hook is something that feels momentous, a turn in your character's arc and plot simultaneously, a decision point or course changing moment, something that maybe puts your character at a crossroads. And when we start in media res, meaning that the story has been assumed to be going on since before the point the reader peers into this character's life, the first point the reader witnesses is actually a turn, some point worthy of looking in on. What makes it worthy isn't its shock value or anything that typically comes to mind when we think of the concept of a hook. Instead, just like each of the other turning point beats, it has a crucial story and character arc role. Even though the main conflict of the inciting incident hasn't blown up the external plot yet. And no, starting a character in a typical day is not going to be enough, not at face value at least. Each turning point beat, the hook included, needs to fulfill all three keys to reader enchantment. My story framework distilled from the insights of brain science. The first key is expectations, and setting up the right expectations, the right promises to your reader, is a major function of the hook. The first lines, especially, need to confirm for readers that they're in the right place, that the YA high fantasy novel they grabbed off that shelf in the bookstore is, in fact, starting off with an appropriately teenaged protagonist in a clearly enough fantastical world, and not a 9-year-old riding in a modern car or something. That way, the reader doesn't flip back to the covers wondering if this book was misshelved. More than genre expectations, the hook also sets up the promises of the type of story direction and tone. Readers need to know enough, even in the first line or two, about where they're starting so they can start predicting trajectories for where it might go. Whatever direction you choose, your opening lines are the reader's first clue about what kind of portal they're stepping into and whether your story is going to keep the promises your cover or marketing copy made. But expectations aren't just external, they're also internal. What your character expects of the world, what they believe is possible, and what they're trying to make happen at this point in their life. Your hook needs to show readers the personal trajectory your character thinks they're on before the story proves them wrong. This is why a typical day doesn't work unless something inside that day is already pressure cooking something for your character. You're starting at this point in your story because it has significance. If nothing is shifting yet, internally or externally, there's no turn and therefore no turning point beat. Readers don't feel the pull of change coming, so their prediction loops don't activate, or at least not in the engaging way you'd want them to. And the story lacks the momentum it needs to pull them relentlessly forward. That starts to take us right into the second key, enlightenment, the deeper meaning and emotional truth your story is built on. This piece is something your readers subconsciously desire. They want to learn from this story vicariously, even while enjoying every minute of the adventure. Although your theme won't be spelled out on page one or beaten over your readers' heads didactically, it should already be present from your first lines so that your hook, just like every other major beat of your story, can fulfill all three of these keys for the best possible design to bring your readers under the story spell they so desire to be put under. So, to do this, your hook should give a hint of the internal struggle your character is already wrestling with from before the story starts. Maybe it's a confirmation of their corrupted version of the truth they need to learn that pushes them to action toward their often misguided desire. or a tiny contradiction in their behavior, a desire they won't admit out loud yet, a pressure they've been avoiding or living with this whole time that suddenly feels harder to ignore. These small cracks in the mask your character wears are what clue readers into the emotional journey ahead. They give the opening its sense of momentousness, not because something huge is happening necessarily, but because something inside your character is shifting, even if they don't see it yet. And having the enlightenment key in place is going to help unlock that third key experience, the immersive, sensory, emotional immediacy that pulls readers into your story's world through the character's perspective. Readers simulate the story as if it's happening to them, or at least through their ability to personally empathize with characters as if they're real people. So your hook needs to place us firmly inside the character's lived experience, what they notice, what they want, what they fear, what this moment means to them, how they care about it all. Even if the external stakes of the main conflict haven't blown up yet, and they probably shouldn't since that's the job of the inciting incident, the character's internal stakes must already feel like they're at a bursting point. When the keys of expectations, enlightenment, and experience all come together in those first lines, the hook becomes a true turning point, one that launches both the reader's investment and the character's arc. So, what might that look like in your story? Here are the components your hook will most likely need to pull readers in. 1. Whose life we're coming into. Readers should know immediately who we're following and feel immersed inside that character's perspective. The hook often best begins in the internal world, what the character cares about and believes, especially as it's related to the external moment or situation they're in, or what they think they're finally moving toward and how they're feeling as they step into this moment. 2. What the character is trying to do right now. Not their big series long destiny, just the specific initial goal or pressure they're acting on in this moment. A goal can carry a reader quite a ways, even without much else to go on. So, this is a powerful way to start when readers really don't have anything else yet to go on. It can be something small on the surface, as long as it ties into the deeper, corrupted truth or desire that shapes their arc. That helps readers know how to care, and they care when they know how the character cares, especially in speculative genres where they can't always rely on assumptions of what's good or bad for a character or what they're rooting for. 3. Why this moment is different from all the days before it. It doesn't have to be dramatic, but it does need to feel like something is turning a bit here. Something internal or external that shows we've entered at a consequential point in the character's life, that there's a reason to be there now. Otherwise, readers struggle hard to get into the story because they don't feel like they're in one yet. They want to know when it's going to get going. But even if they want to push through to that point, it's going to feel like a slog. And yeah, that doesn't really do much for readers' motivation to keep pushing through to get to that main conflict where things actually start to matter. And why should they? If there were lines of text to start reading, the story should have begun already. But if it doesn't feel that way, then crucial pieces are missing.
And I'm still not talking about the later inciting incident that crashes the main conflict into your protagonist's life.
4. What's at stake emotionally right now? Again, these aren't exactly your plot stakes yet. These are the character's emotional stakes. What they fear might happen, what they hope might happen, what outcome they're trying to influence, avoid, or pretend doesn't matter. When these emotional stakes are active, even subtly, readers feel the tension that makes them personally invested and lets them know something is already unfolding. It gives them a reason to keep going. 5. A sense that the world is already in motion. The hook scene isn't the start of everything. Your character is coming into a moment that feels like it's already part of a larger pattern in their life. There's history behind them, pressure around them, and change ahead of them. The reason it's more powerful to start in media res like this is because all of this context provides your character with the perspective, the worldview, and experience they bring to the moment we open on. It makes the character unique and interesting because readers can already start to gather that intel. It's the, hmm, something clearly happened to them to make them think this way thought from readers that presents a curiosity, a mystery to be solved. And now they're invested on that level too because they have a trail of clues they want to tease out and puzzle back together to understand more about how someone came to be this way. That's also part of the learning piece, the enlightenment key, and a dopamine laden path readers don't even always know they're there for. Together, these elements show readers why this moment is the moment worth beginning with, even before any main conflict action comes into play. So maybe you have a better idea of what moment you can make into your hook, but you still have to get that moment onto the page in a way that creates tension and emotional pull from the very first line. This is where writers most get stuck. So, I'm going to show you a simple technique you can use to make your opening irresistible in the video on your screen now.